Good morning, friends. Hey, this is Brother Mike back on the Sunday morning podcast. It's 9 o'clock Pacific time and it's 9 o'clock Arizona time. It's noon on the East Coast. And as usual, I thank you for tuning into the Sunday morning podcast, and special blessing to you, shut-ins. May God richly bless you. Got a good one for you today. It's Mother's Day. Thought I'd share something interesting about mothers with you. Please remember, here in Phoenix at the Arizona Deliverance Center, we're on 15th Avenue just south of Osborne Road at the red brick building. We have 2 live services every week, Thursdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock. Brother Rick is on Thursday nights. Man, he's something special. Definitely recommend you catch that service. It's powerful. I usually teach on Friday nights, same time, 7 p.m. Arizona and Pacific time. Don't forget about our Monday night Zoom service for the ladies. That's at 6:30. We have a Zoom service Wednesday night at 6 o'clock for everybody. Just send me an email, mike@hardcorechristianity.com. I'll send you the code and the password. And also, please ask for the miracle list, a step-by-step guide to healing and deliverance. It works 100% of the time. mike@hardcorechristianity.com, and I will send it out to you. I'll send it today if you ask for it. One's for mentally ill Christians, and the other one is for troubled Christians. Like I said, it works 100% of the time. In addition, we have children's deliverance services that are, man, heartwarming as you can believe. There's nothing better than seeing children get delivered from demons. You wouldn't believe it, because they're innocent. And it's usually easier to get demons out of children because they don't have all the religious baggage adults do. And so it's really exciting to see that. It's first Saturday of every month at the Deliverance Center. I have a deliverance training class the fourth Saturday of every month at noon. That's in the small sanctuary there at the Arizona Deliverance Center. If you need prayer, you can contact me through the email, or you can contact us through the ministry line. We have counseling services available at the Deliverance Center. If you're a born-again Christian, there's no charge for the counseling services. Just give me a call. I'll put you on the schedule, 602-636-5800, and you will be ready to go. We got a lot of different ministries available, a lot of caring people at the Deliverance Center that would love to help you. It's amazing. We're all volunteers there. Nobody gets paid, including me, including my wife. We don't get a salary. We donate all of our time. I donate 100% of my salary to the ministry. And we have a lot of good friends, literally around the world, believe it or not. We have a lot of people send us money from foreign countries. And I don't ask anybody to do anything. I don't myself personally do. So I donate 100% of my salary to the ministry. And we have had so many good friends help us over the years. It's been absolutely amazing. You wouldn't believe the donations that came in, people who truly care. When we had this horrible plumbing disaster at the Deliverance Center, and it tore the place up, we ended up spending $120,000 on that building. You know, I like to have a heart attack. $120,000 had to be spent to repair that. I'm still working things out with the insurance company, but your prayers are being answered, and God has been merciful to us, and He answers our prayers. It's wonderful. I hope you were able to go to the Mario Murillo meeting when he was here a couple weeks ago. I was not able to go. I had gone to North Carolina for a spiritual warfare training conference, and that thing went so beautiful. It was amazing. Couldn't believe how many people got delivered from demons and got healed. It was wonderful. The people in North Carolina were great to us, and they were just, they went beyond the pale to put this thing together. It was outstanding. The ministry team went with me. there, and or I should say, I went with them, and it was a 3-day conference. Couldn't gone any better. Thank you for your prayers. All right, it's Mother's Day. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about mothers, Christian mothers, that is, born again Christian mothers. Mothers can be as jacked up as fathers, obviously. There's nothing special about being a mother or a father. But generally speaking, and I'm speaking in generalities here, mothers tend to love more than fathers. They seem to have more sensitive souls. They tend to feel or sense more, and they tend to be closer to their children. Not in every case, obviously. Abraham and Sarah were an exception, where you had the father that was closer to the child than the mother. But generally speaking, just speaking in generalities, it's usually the mother that is closer to the children. For example, if you go to Judges chapter 13, God intervenes in a miraculous way for the nation of Israel. They're in slavery back then, as you remember, to the Philistines. Philistines owned everything. And God rose up judges during this period. And of course, it's in the book of Judges, obviously. And the angel of the Lord comes to Manoah's wife, and he says to her, listen, you're barren, but you're going to have a miraculous child. And you're to call his name Samson. And he's going to be the great judge of Israel. And he's going to, deliver you from the beatings and the maulings and the brutality of the Philistines. But the angel says, you got to do your part. No unclean foods, no alcohol. And when the child's born, he's never to have his hair cut. He's a Nazarite from his birth. Remember the story? It was a great story, wasn't it? And Samson's mother was so happy because she was barren. And back in those days, having children was the greatest thing you could do. Nowadays, nobody wants to have any kids and nobody cares. Back then, the more kids you had, the greater your family was, and the greater your economy and the greater your prosperity and so on. Everybody wanted to have bushels of kids. Nowadays, nobody wants to have any. Back then, she was so grateful she had a child. I mean, just off the chain. But during her joyous period of being pregnant and giving birth, which was the best thing that ever happened to her, she temporarily forgot what mothers are like, right? This is Mother's Day. Mothers love more than anybody, and the highest form of human love in this world is a mother's love. The highest form of love, of course, obviously, is divine agape love, which means for God so loved the world, Greek word agapao, which is a verb to the noun agape. God loves unconditionally. Agape means unconditional divine love. That means you, my friend, are unconditionally loved by God. That means no matter how much sin you commit, no matter how many things you do wrong, no matter how many things you say wrong, it doesn't matter. You are unconditionally loved by God. Well, that's great, Brother Mike. I think I'll go around and sin all day. Well, no, don't do that, because the law of sowing and reaping jumps in and you're going to get your face kicked in and the gates of hell are coming to breakfast at your house. But while all that's happening, while you're being destroyed, while you're being slaughtered, while you're being beaten into the ground, you are unconditionally loved. Brother Mike, you've been drinking this morning? I have not. The love of God does not change no matter what you say or do, but your circumstances will change based on what you say or do. But God's love for you never changes. Well, a mother's love is secondary to that, obviously, but it's the highest form of human love known to man. But what comes with mother's love is a mother's agony. Mothers love more than anybody else, and they suffer agony more than anybody else. And Samson's mother was in for pain you can't even believe. Pain you can't believe. Samson picked up superpowered on steroids lust demons, and he had the hots so bad he could not control his sex drive. It was out of control. Okay, Samson was the strongest human being that ever lived. Okay, if he were alive today, he would break all of the Olympic and powerlifting records in the entire world. He'd be a world champion in everything. But his sex drive matched his physical strength. And he had the hots for Philistine women because they were hotter than the Jewish women. Jewish women had conservative dress, conservative hairstyles, and so on. Philistine women, they were bootylicious and hot to try. They wore jewelry, they wore lingerie. I mean, they had the whole thing. Victoria wasn't a secret in among the Philistines. Victoria was a secret among the Jews. The Jewish women did not dress like that. Well, Samson's lust demons preferred Philistine women. And they had a meeting one day with his mother. His mother and the father had a meeting with the guy one day. And they said, Samson, dude, can't you keep your pants on? What's your problem, man? Why can't you date one of these Jewish women? They honor Jehovah. They love the eternal God of the Hebrews. They're conservative women. They don't get involved in a bunch of rotten whoring out sex problems. Why aren't you attracted to one Jewish woman? What's the problem? And Samson had married one, and it went bad, and so he went whole hog the other way, and it cost him his life. And so his mother was heartbroken that day that he wouldn't listen to them. He did not heed the advice of his parents. He did not listen to his mother, and it cost him his life. And as you know the story. Delilah killed him. She murdered him. She finished him off. Samson goes over to her house one day, goes around the world with wild sex. He's passed out on her lap. They come in, they cut his hair, poked his eyes out, drug him to the palace, and made fun of him for several days. And there he died. But you know who else died? His mother. Mothers love the most, and they suffer agony the most. Let's move forward 2,400 years. Want to? Here you see the birth of the eternal Son of God. It's spectacular. An angel comes to a young girl, probably 14, 15-year-old girl would be my guess. I don't know that for sure, but girls back then married very young, and they almost all of them were virgins. If you weren't a virgin, most of the time you never got married, never had kids. Keeping your virginity was, priceless back then. Nowadays, it's just tossed around like nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Back then, it was huge. And Mother Mary had a good heart, and she was a good woman, and she cared. Right? And her name was Miriam in the Greek. Some of the texts have Maria in it instead of Miriam, but either one of those, fine. They're similar. And an angel comes to Mother Mary and says, Mary, honey, you are blessed. You wouldn't believe it. You're going to have the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Right here, you're going to get pregnant, and you're going to have the divine Son of God. So she asks a mechanical question. She says, well, I'm only 14 or 15, but I know that intercourse is the way to have children. I've never had intercourse. And then the angel goes on to explain that, listen, this child is not going to be born like any other child. He's not going to be born in sin because he won't have the sin gene that came down through the fathers, through Adam. He will be born He will not be born in sin. And he will be conceived by the Holy Ghost. This is the greatest birth that ever existed, obviously, which led to the greatest life that ever existed and the resurrection of the Son of God. Mother Mary says, she's a teenager. She says, be it unto me according to the will of the Lord, for I am God's handmaid. Translation, I'm his slave. And the angel leaves. You know the story. Everybody does. It's a Christmas story. Jesus is born, and he's put in after he's born, they wrap him up, and they put him in a fontenay. A fontenay is a food trough for animals where you put the food in, and the donkeys come up, and sheep, whatever, they eat out of the trough. Well, they didn't have a crib or anything fancy for Jesus. He was born in a barn or something like that, so they put him in a food trough. And then, of course, you know the story. The shepherds come and they celebrate the birth, the incredible birth of the Son of God. Oh, it's something else. Angels are everywhere. They're celebrating it. This is a special life beyond description, of course. It is the greatest life ever seen. There's nothing like it. And then Mary, then a few years later, he's about 2 or 3 years old, and the wise men come visit him while they're in Nazareth at their home. They bring the gifts. That was God providing their finances. And Paul later said, for my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory. God always provides the needs of his children. That is an unquestioned, unchallenged law of God. God will always provide your needs. He will not always provide your wants, but he will always provide your needs. So they show up and they've got frankincense, myrrh, gold, silver. They give them all these things, beautiful gifts. And those things were to be used to support Jesus during his childhood. And all this time, Mother Mary is just staggeringly in love with him. He's her firstborn child, and she had several children after that. As you know, Jesus had 4 half brothers and an unknown number of sisters. I think the marriage of Cana was one of the sisters getting married. That was my best guess there. And Mary couldn't be happier. Well, when he was 12 years old, Mary got a little bit of a shock hit her. And from the age of 0 to the age of 12, Mary had amnesia. Mary had amnesia. Okay, now what I'm about to tell you, I'm telling you, you're not going to believe. If you look at Luke chapter 2, verse 48, you're going to see something shocking. Jesus stays behind the caravan. You know the story. And they take off. And it took them 3 days to find him. The 3 days. What 3 days? 3 is an interesting number, isn't it? There's a lot of interesting numbers in the Bible. I don't get involved in that too much, but numerology has got some oddities to it, doesn't it? 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. 3 days they're hunting for him. They can't find him. They finally found him in the temple. Now remember, Jesus has a genius IQ. Okay, probably to use our lingo, in the area of 200 IQ, something like that. Einstein had a 160 IQ. Jesus was way smarter than Einstein. And everybody in Nazareth and Joseph and Mary knew he was a very special child. They knew he was a special person. He was way beyond his years in maturity and staggeringly beyond everyone in Nazareth. He was the smartest person in the whole town. His IQ was absolutely off the chain. And he's sitting there blowing the Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees. They were all in the temple there listening to him and talking with him, and they couldn't believe that a 12-year-old kid had the kind of knowledge and experience and understanding and coordination and depth of intellect that Jesus had. They were all flabbergasted. And many of these guys had doctor's degrees in the law of Moses. They were literal experts on the law. And they saw this 12-year-old kid They couldn't believe it. They didn't know who he was. They don't know where he came from. He just pops up in the temple there and he's sitting there asking questions that they didn't get when they were from their professors in Moses of the Law school. They were like shocked at him. Well, Mary and Joseph show up at the temple and they couldn't believe it. He was sitting there asking questions, discussing the law, blowing these people's minds. And Mary walks up to him and says, remember, Mary has now got brain dead amnesia. Over the last 12 years, she lost her mind. She says to him, why did you do this to us? We've been looking all over the place. I've been sick to my stomach. Remember, mother's love. Mother's love is the highest thing in the world. And mothers love the most and they suffer the most. The more you love, the more potential you have for agony and suffering. A mother's love, nothing like it. You know, like for example, right now, if you look at the war in the Middle East, the Jews are going into Gaza trying to chase down the murderous, cold-blooded killers of Hamas. And you see the news media goes in there and a bunch of Hamas people get killed and there's a bunch of civilians that are dead. Well, you see by the dead bodies, most of the people yelling, crying, and screaming are what? Not all, but most, are mothers. They're screaming and crying over the children that have been killed as collateral damage to this insane war in Israel, while they're trying to run down these murderous, cold-blooded Hamas killers. Well, it's usually the mothers you see on the news wailing and crying over the death of their children. Mothers love the most, but they also suffer the most. And Mother Mary was suffering. She said, son, why'd you do this to her? We looked all over for you, man. I was scared to death. My heart sunk down to my guts. We didn't know where you were. We didn't know if you'd been kidnapped, somebody murdered you, you've been put into sex slavery. We didn't know if you were dead. We didn't know if robbers murdered you. We didn't know what happened to you. I was dying. Your father, she says, your father has been looking all over for you. Now, boom, here we go. Brain dead amnesia. Mother Mary then asks Jesus and explains to him that his father, Joseph, had been hunting everywhere for him. Do you remember that? Yeah, it's in Luke chapter 2, verse, 28 or something like that? Luke 1, chapter 2, 38. Yeah, you remember that? Yeah, it was amazing. And she says, we're scared to death. What are you doing? Verse 48, it says that when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, son, why have you dealt with us like this? Behold, your father and I have sought you sorrowing. Odonao is the Greek word. It means to be extremely grieved. They were emotionally grieved. And Jesus said to them, how is it that you sought me? Didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business? Verse 50, and they understood not what he said. And he went down with them, and he came to Nazareth and was subject to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. What's going on here? Mother Mary, over a 12-year period of time, raising children, working, being busy with the cares of this life, had forgotten the visitation of the angel. And in her mind, Jesus had become one of her sons like her other ones. She had lost the vision of his mission. The angel said that he would be the savior of the world. She forgot it all. And then at the end of Matthew, she's standing there at the cross. John apparently is standing there next to her. There's some other women that were there, but they were far off back over there. But she was up near the cross with supposedly John, and her heart is being destroyed. Mothers love the most, but they also suffer the most. And they carry the most pain over their children. Mother Mary was devastated as he hung on the cross. And Jesus, to make sure that she was taken care of, looks down. He says to, supposedly to his John, she says, hey, there's your son now, Mom. Son, there's your mother now. Take care of her. And John took her in, lived with her since that day. And the last time we ever heard from Mother Mary was on the day of Pentecost. She was in the upper room. They all got filled with the Spirit. And the last thing we knew she ever did was speak in tongues. A mother's love, greatest thing in the world, but they also suffer the greatest pain when their children are in pain. 30-something years before that, an angel comes to the synagogue, and boom, Zacharias is there. He's doing his normal duties, serving the Lord, been serving the Lord for years. Very faithful servant, faithful man of God. And he and his wife, Elizabeth, had been praying literally for decades for a son, for a child. She was barren, just like Samson's mother. Couldn't have kids. Well, Elizabeth never lost hope and never started doubting and did not allow unbelief to enter her heart, because mothers love more, usually more than anybody else. And mothers are usually more spiritual than fathers, women more spiritual than men, generally speaking. Not always, generally speaking. Elizabeth kept those prayers up. I'm going to have a child someday. I'm just going to keep on believing. That's what Jesus said to Brother Jairus the day he came to see Christ, and his daughter was dying and was probably already dead. He said, come to my house because my daughter's dying. She's probably already dead by now. And Jesus said, hey, lead the way. I'm there. And as he's going there, everybody from the house and the synagogue comes to him and says, hey, your daughter kicked the bucket. She's dead. Don't bother the rabbi anymore. Just come on home. We got to plan the funeral. We got all these things we got to do. Brother Jairus, his heart literally destroyed, turns and looks at Jesus with total fear on its face. And the Lord looks at him and says 3 words, keep on believing. And Brother Jairus looks at the people. He looks at Jesus and he goes, I got to make a decision here. I'm at a crossroads of my life. And you will face these crossroads in your life numerous times. And you'll have to make a decision. Shall I go this way or shall I go that way? Brother Jairus, instead of going down the tube, said, I'm going to keep on believing. He heads back home. Well, you know the story. The daughter was raised from the dead. And Zacharias was, in a sense, rewarded because he kept his faith and kept on believing. Well, Elizabeth had it. She had it right here. Mothers love more. They tend to believe more, but they also suffer more than men, than fathers, generally speaking, not in every case. She kept on believing, but Zacharias, doubt started to creep in, and he wasn't believing anymore. Lip service, he was believing. He talked to Elizabeth at home over dinner. She'd say, I think Jehovah's going to come through for us. I'm still going to have a child. Zacharias would go, amen, sister. He had all that church lingo down. The people at church you see. You ever seen church people before? They're They're hilarious. They got all this church lingo down. Hallelujah, bless you, brother. God will come through. Blah, blah, blah. There it goes. Nothingness. It's just all lip service. Well, Zechariah had a bunch of lip service with her. He said, "Yeah, that's right, honey. Keep on believing. We're going to be having a son here. No problem." Well, he was lying. He didn't believe anymore. He went to the temple. The angels stood there. He couldn't believe it. He was petrified. He was in total fear. Why? Doubt had crept in. See, Satan uses demons of fear to create doubt in Christians. That's how he does it. Fear generates doubt. It's genetic. It's procreative. If you're afraid, you will soon be doubting right after that. He looked up at that angel and he was petrified. The angel told him about this incredible prophecy about his son, the greatest prophet and preacher that ever lived. The great John the Baptist was to be born of his wife, Elizabeth. Miraculous birth, supernatural. Well, he didn't believe it. Even after the angel told him, that's how sick this guy got. That's how lost his faith was. And if you've done that in your life, you're gonna see the same result. You're not gonna get a miracle. You're not gonna get your prayers answered. You got to be like Elizabeth. You can't be like Mother Mary. You got to stay focused. You got to be like Brother Jairus. You got to be confronted with doubt and unbelief, but you got to keep on believing. So Zacharias was stricken dumb. That's an old-fashioned term for mute. The Greek word is alalos. Couldn't speak anymore. And to write stuff down or use sign language or point or whatever. You know how you do it. Can't talk. And it went all the way through the pregnancy and the day he was born when they named him Aeon or John. He could speak again. He wrote it down. And John the Baptist became, I mean, you read that story. Absolutely amazing. It's great to be like a mother, loving a lot, caring a lot, believing a lot. But it's very bad to be like a mother because they hurt more, they suffer more, and they have more agony. Mother's Day is today. The great apostle Peter warned every Christian, I'll close with this. If you dishonor your parents, something happens to the child. And Paul said, if you want to live a good life, you cannot dishonor your parents because it'll hinder your prayers. Children who degrade, humiliate, and lambast and lampoon their parents, the demons are allowed to put curses on them. And when these curses land on the person, over the course of their life, things seem to go wrong. They get money for a while, then they're broke. They have a relationship for a while, it goes great, then it falls apart. Strange oddities of failure and losses seem to start occurring in the person's life. And it's a pattern. And you can always tell if someone's cursed because it's a pattern, not a one-off. Bad things happen to everybody, no matter who you are. Faithful, unfaithful, born again, sinner, doesn't matter. Bad things happen to everybody. But not everybody has a pattern of bad things. A pattern illustrates a curse. When you look back over your life when you were young and you hated your parents or you cursed them because, let's be honest, they deserved it. Let's say you had two parents that suck. A lot of people have very bad parents. My parents were drunks. And, a lot of parents have a lot worse than the parents I had. And if you get angry at them, if you develop resentment, if you develop bitterness, if you curse them, if you talk back to them, if you degrade and humiliate them and lambast and lampoon them, if you do that as a kid, as a young adult, as an older person, a curse falls on your life, and you'll be able to see a pattern of failure in your life over the years that you can't get rid of. Even after you become a born again Christian, that pattern of failure seems to follow you. I know that sounds crazy, but I've been a counselor for over 40 years. You wouldn't believe how many people I've seen in my office who are spirit-filled, born-again Christians who have curses on them because they never repented of the parent curse. Well, this is Mother's Day, and you need today to sit down and say, hey, you know something? Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I hated my parents. Maybe I said some things I shouldn't have. Maybe I talked to my mother a certain way. Maybe I did something to her, or maybe I paid her back because of all the horrible things she'd done to me. Maybe I verbally blasted her, well, the way she used to do me. Maybe I returned it in kind when I was younger. I'm not doing it now, but I did it when I was younger. And I noticed there's been kind of a weird pattern in my life, almost like I got a mother curse on me. Got a bunch of divorces, and my kids are going nuts. Different things are happening to me. Things that make you go, Well, you need to your way back to how you treated your mother and go to God and get this thing fixed. If she's still alive, you make that call to apologize. Send that email, you send the letter, you do whatever you have to do to apologize to her. If she's not alive, you do the same thing, but you do it to the Lord instead. And you, in Jesus' holy name, get this curse broken off of you so this pattern of failure and losses can be eradicated and removed and eviscerated. And that's how you do it. Repentance is the key to deliverance and victory. God will always honor people with godly sorrow and people who repent. That's how he does it. You had a problem with your mother in the past, get it fixed today, because today's Mother's Day. Today's the best day to do it. Mother's Day. Today's the best day to do it. It's Mother's Day. My mother's dead. I'd give anything. I'd pay some serious money to have lunch with my mother again. I got a whole bunch of things I would say to her. Most of them apologizing. Most of them related to, I'm sorry, or I did this, I did that. I should have done this, I shouldn't have. I would go on and on. When I get to heaven, the first person I'm going to be looking for is my mother. And we'll find her somewhere there. I got some things I need to say to her. But the things I needed to say to her, I said to the Lord. I'm going to apologize to him for what I did. The things I said, should never have done it. I was 100% at fault. And there wasn't anybody else to blame but me. And ask God for mercy and ask him to forgive me. I asked him for the blood that Jesus shed to cover my mother curse. And mercy caught me. It'll catch you today. Because it's Mother's Day. Yeah. Sometimes mothers forget things they shouldn't, like Mother Mary. And sometimes mothers suffer enormous agony, like Samson's mother. Oh man, he wouldn't choose a Jewish woman. He wouldn't stop pouring himself out to these Philistine women, prostitutes, and crazy demon-possessed, bootylicious babes. He wouldn't stop doing it. His mother, oh, she hurt. They poked his eyes out. It was like they poked her eyes out. They strapped him up in the temple, making fun of him. Everything they said to him went right to his mother. She felt all of it. He died when God granted his last prayer. Samson apologized and begged for mercy. And of course, God's a merciful God. God is a God of love. He gave Samson his strength back, and he took those pillars down, and over 3,000 people died that day of the Philistines, and the nation of Israel was saved again. by God's love and His mercy. Are you a mother today? And are you hurting today over something that happened to your kids or something your kids did or something your kids did to you? You can transfer that pain to the Lord. And today is the best day to do it. You know why? It's Mother's Day. Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest, Jesus said. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest to your souls. Why do you say souls? Greek word psyche. Soul is where your emotions come out of. And mothers, generally speaking, have more emotions in their soul than anybody else. They love more, they feel more, they sense more. And when things go bad, they hurt more, they have more pain, they have more grief. That's what it is. It's called a mother. Today is Mother's Day. If you trashed your mother when you were young, give her a call today, get a hold of her somehow, get those apologies going. You know, do what I did. I don't normally tell people to act like me. You know, yeah, I don't have that much fanfare with me. You know, but man, I was a broken person many years ago, and I had to go back to God and say, hey, I am so sorry for what I've done. It was too late to tell her. She was already dead. She died. She was only 62, and she died from what? She smoked. I lost her when she was only 62, but years later, after I turned my life over to the Lord, I realized what I had done. I had to make it right. I had to go to the Lord and make this thing right. And I did. God had mercy on my soul. He'll do it to you too. I'm nothing special. I'm just a regular person like everybody else. If God forgave me, He'll forgive you. If I got a miracle, you'll get one too. Happy Mother's Day. See you next time.